What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to What's Your Story? My name is Jeff Mullen, and if you're new, I want to welcome you to the show. I'm really excited to have my friend Jesse on the show today. He's someone I've known, I think, back to 2016 or so. Kind of an interesting story with that is as he was running a studio down in Boston, a Fitness Together at that point, and I was coming in to work there. Kind of how it happened is he ended up leaving to go to a different place in Boston. I kind of fell into his role there, and that's how we get to know each other. We had a lot in common at first. Jesse's really into powerlifting. I was more of the bodybuilding side, but enjoyed the powerlifting, so we definitely got along in that avenue. He's doing a lot of big things down in Boston now, and someone that's very educated in that strength conditioning field. We're going to get into more, but right at this point, I just want to welcome Jesse to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff. It's good to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, no problem, man. So I kind of want to get started. A lot of these shows that we've been talking about is how people get started on their journey in the fitness field and whatever avenue they kind of went. So for you, how did it start? When did you get into the fitness industry, and kind of what led you to go into that direction?
For me, getting into fitness, when I was really young, I was very unathletic, uncoordinated, not very good at sports or anything like that. And I just started probably in middle school working out in my basement. That was probably the very first time that I was introduced to working out and doing something to try to change your body and get a result. I was bullied a lot in middle school, and it was kind of like an outlet for me to take some of that frustration, some of that energy that I had, and just kind of turn it into something that was a little bit more creative. From there, going into high school, I started to get into a little bit of shape, working out for, a couple of years, just doing basic things, push-ups, bench press, squats, things like that. And I started to become more athletic, started playing sports. I never played organized sports in school until high school. And I had never played football until 10th grade, and I ended up getting a scholarship for that. But that led to a lot of working out. A lot of team workouts that led to track and field, 3-season athlete. That developed into going to college and playing football in college for a year. I had an injury, and then that kind of led me to I can't be an athlete anymore, not in the way that I wanted to. So then I got into the coaching side of things in about 2010. And this is up at Brockport State in New York. I was studying exercise physiology. I switched my major from biology, pre-med, into more of an exercise physiology. I basically was more interested in human side of the biology and things like that. So I decided I was going to fully focus on that. And I started training, I think, as a sophomore in college. And I've been training ever since. Jumping around from New York, upstate, down to Long Island, doing internships. I interned at Stony Brook University, worked with a D1 football player, a couple Olympians, pro basketball players. It was a pretty cool experience, great facility. And that kind of got me into like my love for strength and conditioning right then and there, just seeing it in the big picture, big teams coming in, huge operation. And then I just moved to Boston. I just picked up everything and left. And I think that was I moved 2012, right after I graduated from college. And that's where I started training downtown. Originally started at Equinox, and I trained there for probably about 6 months. And it was cool, great facility, really cool people. But then it just didn't work out for me financially. I was always trying to sell people, and didn't come naturally at first for me, and I was always kind of frustrated about how, I thought I had all this great training experience, good knowledge, and then just wasn't really getting anywhere in terms of gaining clients and being really busy, making a ton of money. So that's where I left, and I got the job at Fitness Together, and it's where we ran into each other, and did that for a number of years. I think I was there for 4.5 years. And that was a really cool experience. I definitely was able to practice my craft. It was the longest training job that I had at the time. And I was able to really get into a rhythm with training and developing a training model and what I really like to get out of a training session. Crushed a ton of sessions there. I mean, 30 a week, 40 a week. Um, I got into physical therapy there. There was a guy down the street that I really looked up to, and he was super smart. He was doing this stuff that I had never seen before, and decided I wanted to go to physical therapy school from there. I applied, put everything that I had into it, went back to school, did some prerequisite classes, took all my savings, put it into it, and then I didn't get in.
Shit.
So that kind of changed my perspective on a couple things in the fitness industry and what gets you where, and what you need or don't need to succeed. So I decided from that point there, I was kind of destroyed when I didn't get in. I was like, damn, like there goes all my plan. Everything that I had was in this. I was all in. And now I have to kind of rethink what I'm going to do. And I just kind of decided, well, the model that I wanted to build for myself, the ultimate business and, career that I want to build, I don't necessarily need this degree. And that's when I kind of decided I need to make some changes. I moved out of the city. I'm now in Waltham and just outside of Boston. And I started working at a place called Train Boston, which is where I am now. And it is a physical therapy center and a sports center. And I'm working with some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. It's been probably the ultimate. At the time, I thought this is it. This is the pinnacle of training right here. And I'm still here, and I love it. So it's kind of a brief point A to point B in terms of like professionally how I got different places. But yeah.
No, it's crazy how like your perspective changes from scenario to scenario. Like you go into one situation thinking like this is going to be great, this is awesome, this is where I want to be, and then something changes, then you want to go to PT and then it doesn't work out, and it's like crazy how like you just keep bouncing all over and you just kind of roll with the punches. But it's crazy how your perspective, it just changes, from what you want to an extent almost. So would you say that you found yourself through fitness? Like that was the beginning of like fitness is what, obviously it's your career now, but like you said, you got picked on, you were bullied a bit. Was that kind of your outlet growing up that started this whole process?
Yeah, totally. It kind of gave me an identity or, it's funny how it goes for a lot of people as they go through this in the fitness industry. It started as an outlet. I had a lot of difficulty, things I was challenging in my head, and going through puberty and being uncomfortable with yourself. Like I was lucky enough to find something that made me feel good, and that was super powerful for me. Like from day one, like the first time I got a pump in my biceps, like there's nothing like that first time
right
feeling.
Oh yeah. You're like I'm jacked and your arm's like 12.5 inches.
Yeah. And it's like you get hooked on that, and then after doing that for a while, you're like, all right, I got this thing that I do that makes me feel like awesome, and I'm just gonna keep doing that. Like, so for a while it became like, all right, this is kind of like, I guess at the time, like when I was younger, I didn't really realize like, hey, this is a huge part of who I am. I just knew I like to work out. I like to be physical. I like to, once I got a little bit older in high school and in college, I like to play sports, and I was decent at it. For me, it was just a huge reward factor. Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm good at. So this is what I'm going to put my time and energy into. Completely turned into my identity, I think, in college. Like, kind of became like this. I mean, maybe in high school, like senior year of high school, like fully into like that kind of jock stereotype, like love to work out, on the sports teams, things like that. But yeah, it's totally developed like my identity now. It's like, if I didn't have that in my life, I don't know what I would do. So,
kind of going off that is when you got injured. So you're playing football. You said you had a big injury. Kind of what was that injury? And at that point, did you feel like, because you said this is basically your identity, did you feel like you were losing a big piece of yourself and struggled to like what was next because of that injury? Or like how did that go?
Yeah. So there's a couple different injuries that were kind of like turning points in my life. And there's two in particular that I'll mention here. The first one, when I was playing football, I was recruited to play football at Brockport. And upon starting, going up the day before I was supposed to arrive at training camp, I was on the track running sprints and I broke my foot. It was a stress fracture that I had aggravated in April, and then I just was not educated about recovery and treating an injury at that time, and I just kept training on top of it. And then in about August, mid-August, it just snapped, and my foot just was completely immobile, couldn't use it, and that kind of put the squash on my first football season. I recovered, came back, and it was still like not the same. Still hurting all the time. Couldn't handle a lot of the impact of a lot of the workouts, and that kind of led to another break of the same spot. And then at that point, the doctor was like, listen, if you break this or continue to do this to yourself, your bones are just going to separate. We're going to have to bolt them. Your ankle mobility is going to be like zero, and you probably will never be able to sprint normally again. So that was kind of like, all right, well, I should probably lay off some of this impact stuff. And that was about going into my sophomore year of college. So that's when I basically pulled the plug. I was like, all right, I'm not going to go into football. I'm going to just kind of focus my attention on something else. That was the exact same time that I changed my major to exercise physiology. And that kind of set the ground for my degree and where I went after that, coming from this injury that I had in my ankle. And it kind of just set things off. Like it didn't really like today, it doesn't limit me at all. It's completely recovered. It's fine. Like it's tighter than the other ankle, but it doesn't hold me back, but it just kind of set me in a different direction, which I think was kind of important at the time looking back. The second injury that I think kind of defines a lot of the things that I'm doing now is when I was working in the South End and I would commute. I rode my bike downtown from like where I lived up in Alston down to the South End. It was about a 13-minute bike ride, not far at all. But one day I hit, it's like an expansion joint in the pavement. It sent me into a fence, and I ruptured my synovial capsule, tore my quad, and basically everything from the outside of your knee all the way to the deepest part of your knee. I just had a huge hole right through it. Ugh. It was gross. I didn't know what to do. I just continued to ride my bike to work. It was, it hurt, but I was like, all right, I don't know if I could walk this off. Went to the hospital, had emergency surgery, and it was a 2-layer surgery. One was deep inside of the joint, and then there was one that was more superficial. That I thought, I am done. I thought I'm never going to be able to squat again. Right. I'm never going to be able to do all these athletic things that I want again. And it really kind of changed my mindset of like how I look at training and what I'm going to try to do to recover. From there, I had some physical therapy, but the majority of the rehab, I did it on my own. Just a lot of strength training, a lot of single leg work. But that ultimately led me to this comeback, this motivation of like a comeback to like, all right, once I see, okay, I can get better, I can get stronger from doing these things. It led me ultimately to becoming extremely competitive in powerlifting. And that was kind of the thing where it's like, all right, I have a reason to train again. Like before I kind of, after college, after football, I did workouts. I went to the gym religiously, but like no real purpose other than like, I feel good by doing this. And then after that injury, it was like, okay, now there's a real fire. Now I want to be competitive again. I'm not done yet. And since then I've been just on fire.
No, it's incredible because it's like you said, it's kind of like that comeback story of, oh shit, I'm gonna lose my identity. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna be able to lift. Like, all right, let's flip this script and see if I can push myself to like another level. So yeah. It's crazy. So I was gonna bring up next like powerlifting side of it. So obviously that's how you got into it. And as you got into it, have you seen those injuries flare up at all? Has it been an issue like compensation or has it been, something more of just normal progression that you've had to deal with going into the gym?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things I notice. The ankle injury and the knee injury were on the same leg. So that definitely, like I noticed some things on my right knee sometimes, but it really doesn't hold me back. I'm fortunate enough to have learned a lot about the rehab side of things. I've been working side by side with physical therapists for probably the last, 7 years. And I was exposed to PRI while I was working in the South End, and that's been a huge game changer for the way that I look at movement and biomechanics. I kind of really nerd out on that stuff, selfishly so that I can train harder, but also so that I can help other people and do other things. But I've definitely found that through a lot of the rehab stuff that I do, and I do it probably 5 times as much as my powerlifting stuff, that's really been the game changer to making sure that these things don't hold me back. But there's things like when it gets rainy out, like my knee aches a little bit, it'll swell a little bit. They say that it's because I've had surgery on it that it's going to be, more susceptible to arthritis when I get older. So, I mean, I know there's some things that I might be dealing with at some point because of it. But right now I've got it managed pretty well and it doesn't hold me back at all. I never have days where it's like, oh, it's a bad knee day,
You got to get those stem cell action coming soon.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Right. So with, I was going to say with the powerlifting side, obviously it's like a huge part of your life. I'm going to kind of get a little deeper, different level. And so I saw on Facebook or Instagram the other day, you made a post. It was about, obviously the coronavirus, everything going on. It was you almost not be able to power lift. And then I see you, in 35-degree weather in a hoodie squatting in the basement. You're like, did you feel like once you get home, obviously it impacted you and it made you nervous of not being able to do your thing. Why is powerlifting so important to you? Is it just your identity? It's what you love doing? Or like, what would you say the reason is? Like either that was a scary thing to you and it kind of was like, oh shit, or like, why do you love it so much?
Yeah. I think the big reason why I'm so hooked on it is it's just like, think of any other form of addiction, right? Like there's some feeling that makes you keep coming back. And if it's powerful enough, you're going to be so hooked that nothing can pry you away from it. And that's kind of how it is. Like I know myself, I have a very addictive personality. I once I find something I love, I just work it to death. So for me, like with a lot of that powerlifting, I think a lot of the reason why I like it so much is there's this huge sense of reward once you do something that you've never been able to do before. And it's all extremely quantifiable in terms of, all right, I used to be able to lift this much weight, or maybe this much weight for this many reps, and now I'm here. And it's just like super cut and dry. Like the numbers are motivating, like just being able to do stuff you've never been able to do before. For me and the way that my brain works, like that's rewarding. It makes you feel good. Like, you'll think of weird things like if something physical comes up in everyday life, you're just like, all right, well, no big deal because I can lift so much, like it doesn't even matter. And that kind of feels good. Like it's all about a feeling. Like it's extremely dopaminergic. Like you get this huge reward sense, this big, rush of chemicals in your brain when something nice happens. And, I think that's pretty much the main reason. It just makes you feel good. And for me, it's something that I've always naturally been good at. It's a well that's not been run dry yet. So, I keep coming back for more, just like any other sort of addiction, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate 100%. And it's interesting. So I have a lot in common with you in the aspect of the identity side, also the working out side. So long story short with me is like, I got picked on, bullied in high school to an extent, a skinny, scrawny kid. So, once you get into it, you build confidence. But the thing, to your point, which I love, is on the working out side, the strength side, the aesthetic side, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, whatever, is like you have 100% complete control of how you look, how strong you get, because like there's no one who can take that away. They can't control your eating. They can't control the performance side or what effort you're putting in. So I just love that aspect so much. And like you said, to the identity side, the injury can mess with you so bad. And for me, it went from, I felt like a strong, for my side of it, like a strong bodybuilder that, felt really good, strength continuing to grow. And then, the injury side, I think for a lot of people can just mess with them so much. Like it messed with me is you lose 20 pounds of muscle. You don't want to eat because can't work out. And you kind of spiral down this circle of, well, who am I now? For you, how did what is your mentality or things that you do on a daily basis, maybe in times where you got injured, that allow you to keep pushing and coming back? Because you said, you took it as a challenge to get better. Like, is that something you got developed at a young age, or is that something you had to work on a daily basis to get to that point?
I would say that it's it's something that's definitely developed over time. The way I would look at it now, with a little bit more insight into what I'm doing now and how I got here, like, everything in my life has to align with these large goals that I have and the lifestyle and career that I've chosen. And if it basically does not align with those and go in the same direction, I cut it completely out of my life. This is something I started doing probably in college when I realized, like you said, like, I have complete control if I want it. I started to take it, started to do things like, in college, everybody drinks a ton. And I just completely stopped drinking. I completely stopped that. I saw what it did to my body, didn't like it. And that's just an easy example. Like, if there's something that gives me an undesired result, I just cut it out. I just don't do it anymore. And that just kind of developed over time. In the beginning, I was like, all right, I'm just going to not drink. I'm just going to eat better. And then that turns into, now, like, today, it's like I monitor my sleep. I make sure my HRV is good. I meal prep every single meal that I eat, keeping extreme control on pretty much any possible thing that could affect my performance, all the way down to the way that you structure your day, what time you wake up. Every part of that control has been developed slowly over time. I kind of, when I try to describe this to people, like, if I'm trying to help a client realize, like, hey, you have this really big goal, but you have all these things that are kind of working against you. I draw them this picture where I basically draw a bunch of lines pointing towards a single point. And I say these lines represent all the good things that you do that are going to contribute towards your goals. And then I draw lines that go in the complete crisscross opposite direction. I tell them these are your roadblocks. The more of these you can get rid of, and the more arrows you can get pointed in the right direction, the more successful you'll be with no matter what. It's all about just eliminating your limitations, if you know what those are, or being able to even recognize them if you haven't even gotten that point. But then also maximizing, the things that you can actually change and control and get better at. So it's definitely developed over time. But yeah, that's kind of my outlook on that.
What do you think a few words or a different, that people struggle with the most that kind of represent it? For example, the struggle, I guess, is a couple of things I always say is it's like discipline and accountability. Those are like, to me, it's like if you don't have discipline, like, Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jocko, discipline equals freedom. The little things you do every day from the time you wake up, and then just being accountable. I think that's what a lot of people struggle with from my end. I don't know if that's the two words you would use, but to me, like, if people can get disciplined and stay accountable to themselves and take that, like, almost that everything is your fault mentality, so you can't blame anyone else, they would be so much farther in the gym, outside the gym, whatever. Do you feel like those words, or do you have anything else that represents that?
That instantly makes me think of, I believe it's Dr. Mike Isertel, who he describes it as the training to fuckery ratio.
Right.
Basically, all the things that you do that are important and good and trainable versus all the things that are not. And it's exactly that. Like, yeah, discipline is going to give you freedom. If you really want this goal, you're probably going to be feeling better once you hit it and have that feeling of freedom and not be trapped by this. Think about like what people struggle with, right? Like, they'll usually spin their wheels. They'll put in some effort. They'll, give a good amount of effort in the beginning. And then as soon as things start to get really tough, they kind of fall off, right? So it's kind of interesting how somebody can get there and just kind of be like, well, how am I going to make a good return on my investment from the time that I spend on these things? And you can there's a million ways you can kind of put it into like an analogy, whether it be like, the freedom and the discipline, or like, you could think of it even like money and investing. If you want to buy a house, you need to put so much away and, save this much. And maybe you have to do some things in your life to be able to afford that. And I think it's the same thing with training. You know, any big goal, like it just has to be important enough, and then all these things will start to fall in line. I think a lot of people that struggle, it just doesn't matter to them as much as they think it does, or they're not willing to. Their level of work is not equal to the level of the goal.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what it actually takes to be that. They think they can get in there, get a few workouts, lose weight, and feel better. And then, companies take advantage of that with the juice cleanses, and everyone's going keto, and now everyone's vegan, and now everyone's this, trying to look for these fixes where it's tough too, because you could be doing all the right things in the gym and they're not getting results, and it can be frustrating because there's so much more to it. Like you were talking about with your nutrition side, is if you're at a caloric deficit and you're trying to put on mass and get stronger, it's very hard to do that.
Yep.
And the same goes to like, hey, I want to lose weight or build muscle. It's same concept. If you don't know your nutrition, it's difficult. On the nutrition standpoint, are you still doing the vertical diet?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you've been doing it for how long now?
I've been doing the vertical diet for over 3 years.
Okay. And for people that necessarily don't know what it is, in a brief explanation, do you mind explaining it?
Yeah. So the vertical diet is, the way I would describe it is, it's a diet based on increasing your health and performance. I usually just tell people kind of like what the structure is and the principles behind it. So it's a lot of animal proteins, a lot of red meat, a lot of white rice, and then a ton of vegetables. Basically, the way that I look at things when I'm prepping my meals is I'm going to get my protein source from a high quality animal source. So I do a lot of beef, bison, some turkey, a ton of eggs, but usually all animal protein for that. The carbohydrate source is going to come from vegetables, plants, fruit, and rice. And that's pretty much it. There's no processed foods. It's based on eliminating nutrient deficiencies and performance. So I've noticed a lot of things like it's very anti-inflammatory. It's got a ton of nutrients in it, very nutrient dense. And it's really, for me, very sustainable because it comes with a rule book of like, hey, these are the foods that'll get you there. If you need vitamin C, boom, here's some foods with vitamin C. You need magnesium, boom, here's some foods with magnesium. And then you can just pick them. Make sure you've got everything in your weekly meals. And then, for me, it's been super easy. I've been doing it for 3 years. I kind of joke with people and tell them, like, I eat the same thing every day for every meal.
Right.
Lunch is always the same. And it's kind of funny, but like I never get sick of it because it's got everything I need in it. And think about it. If I'm eating steak and rice all the time, it's delicious. Like there's no need for anything else. But yeah, I mean, if anyone's interested in the vertical diet, you could definitely check out Stan Efferding's stuff. He's like a genius when it comes to this stuff. It's something I really kind of fall in love with, and I love the principles behind it. It's super easy to follow, and it's really a great diet, I think, for strength athletes.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because I agree. I mean, I did it for, I think I did it for like 6 or 8 weeks. This was like a while ago. And then I just got more into, I would say the primary, like 70% of my diet when I'm focused in the gym and locked in would be more of that base. And then I have like a more of a, if it fits your macro side of it. So I'll have other things to play into it. But it's interesting too, because if you think logically based off of the general pop view of the world of everything nutrition, it's like animal products, eggs, all these different things, which contradicts what everyone thinks is actually good, because of that's a misconception of everything. Everyone's worried about cholesterol, everyone's worried about sodium, everyone's worried about, white rice has no fiber, so oh my gosh, it's high glycemic, and it's crazy I guess the whole point of it is just crazy how misconstrued, I would say, the world is based off of when it comes from a nutritional standpoint. I know this is mostly performance based, but you could most people, if they had these basic concepts, would be in a way better spot than normal.
Yeah, I find that the vertical diet, I mean, another huge thing is it helps your digestion a ton. Like your body works like clockwork when you're on and everything's perfect. And you definitely notice, like, if you go off of it and let's say you've been really good, you've been on the diet for say 4 to 6 weeks, everything's perfect, running like clockwork. And then you go out and let's say have a pizza and drink some beer. you're going to really feel that in a lot of different ways the
Yeah.
next day. Your digestion will be off. You'll feel like shit. If you have any sort of biometric measurements, I'm sure those will go down as they would normally. But I think that the big thing I've learned from the vertical diet is like when you eat good foods and you consistently do it, like you feel really good. And it allows you to train harder, recover better. And again, that just kind of leads me to getting more of that reward out of, let's say, training. If my lifestyle and my nutrition are supporting that, then I'm just going to get even more out of it, than I was before. And that's, again, another reason why I've done it for 3 years as well. It's worked for me and I've been pretty successful with it. And yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously your results are going up. If you follow you on your Instagram, it's crazy your lifts. Like I remember, I don't even know how long ago it was, but it's obviously in the time of the last couple of years. I remember you were chasing down like 600-pound deadlifts, and you'd like pull it, it'd be a grinder, you'd be stopping halfway, you'd almost get there, and then like have to drop it. And then the next year you post a video and it's like you're doubling it and tripling it. And then you just posted a video that you hit 675 on your dead for a double, which is wild, considering how, obviously it's a lot of work and your diet's been on point. But off that point, what are some goals you have with the powerlifting side? Do you have certain numbers? Because for me, when I was doing it, it was like you'd have this goal to hit a number, and then like literally 30 seconds later, you're like, all right, what's the next number? But like,
Yeah.
what are some current goals you have with powerlifting right now? Is there numbers? Are you have meets coming up, or where are you at?
Yeah. So it was about a year ago I decided I'm going to go all in again. And I wanted to go to nationals. I wanted to go to one of the biggest competitions in the country and compete there. And part of that is you have to qualify. And in 2019, the qualifying total, I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was somewhere around 700 kilograms for the 93 kilogram class. And somewhere around 1,550 pounds for a total. And then that year they bumped it up because a ton of kids showed up to nationals. The meet probably took like 4 days to complete. So then they bumped it up to now a competitive level. I think it's like 750 kilogram total. So that's the current goal, to get up there in terms of individual lifts. In competition, 700-pound deadlift. In competition, 600-pound squat. And then the bench press would be somewhere around 350. And those are goals that I'm currently working towards. But it's kind of like it's what I do in the gym. I never am satisfied. Like, let's say I hit 700 in the gym. To me, the standards that I hold myself to on this national competition in mind, it's not good enough until it's on a platform. So I'll continue to train above and beyond that, so that when I step onto the platform, what I bring is going to be something that I'm super proud of, and I'll probably have no doubt of hitting my goals at that point. I overplan. When I'm in a meet prep, it's like I'm neurotic. Like, I'm hard to live with. Everything I do is for a purpose, an intense purpose, and there's nothing that's going to stop me. It's relentless. So those are my current goals in terms of powerlifting. But I would say, given this coronavirus, all of that's kind of, I have to look at it a little bit differently. The meets are being delayed. I don't know if the meet that I was going to qualify at is even going to happen. So it's kind of put a little bit of a hold on that, which is interesting to deal with. I haven't really figured out, how am I going to adjust my timeline yet, without, knowing when it's going to start. But, yeah, those are the big goals for the upcoming year. I definitely want to go to nationals. That's the big one right now. Get into that big stage.
So how do you, so I guess I'm curious how you answer this, because everyone looks at it differently. So how do you find balance between like your job, your life, and powerlifting? Or are you more in the aspect of like, if I have to be good at this, then I have to do whatever it takes, and you almost have to be obsessed to do what you need to do?
Yeah, I'm definitely more obsessive than the average person, I would say. It's not an all or none thing. Like there is some level of balance in my life, but it may look different to another person than the way that I would look at it. I think that ultimately balance is, an individual thing. Like, if you're happy with what you're doing, balance doesn't necessarily have to exist. Or maybe balance is not exactly like you hear balance and it's like, all right, things are even, right? Like,
Right.
doesn't necessarily have to be even. Maybe balance for me is like one thing's way higher than another, and that's cool. Um, yeah, I would definitely say I'm a little bit more obsessive over the things that I want when it's like crunch time and it's time to go, like 100%. But, I think that there's a lot of intensity that goes with that obsession. So to be able to, have balance and be able to say, hey, take a step back. Life is not just training and barbells and nutrition. You can sit back and enjoy and be social and do things like that. Like, I think that's really important. It takes work for me though. It's not something like for me, I have to work harder on things outside of the gym than I do things in the gym. And that's just kind of who I am as an individual, the way my brain works.
Yeah, I agree. I think to be great at anything you do, you have to be obsessed to an extent. Like, you can't be the best at anything or even the best you at anything if you're, sacrificing a lot to do that. It's like you said, is if you were 50-50, you'd be a 50-50 power lifter, compared to being like up here and putting it in, because it's a sacrifice. Like, to do what you need to do, you're not drinking, you're not going out as much, there's a lot of things you got to sacrifice. Your eating, your nutrition, your training takes up time. Like you said, it's hard to be around at times. When I was bodybuilding, it was brutal to be around me because I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I'm irritable, but you sacrifice a lot for that. So it's really what your priorities are, what your goals are, and what you want. And then it's all relative. Like, average to you, like you said, is very different to I want to work a 9 to 5 and I want to rest and watch Netflix. But it's a give and take. And I think most people have to realize, like, balance is, if you can't have it all. You have to choose what you want. And like, I love Eddie Hall. Like, I don't know how you feel about Eddie Hall. I love Eddie Hall. So, but like, you look at him in the world record deadlift and what it takes. And everyone has seen the documentary, or you've seen, him on London Real or him on all these different podcasts, just explain what it took to get that deadlift. Like, he almost died basically at the bar. He had to create a scenario in his head that something horrific happened with his children to click his mind to pull, 500 kilos. It's just wild. Like, I have such a respect for people that can go to that level, but you look at, like, couldn't sleep apnea, was almost dying every night, but that's the extreme. But it's to be the best or good. I think people have to realize too, like, even if you just want to get better in the gym as a client, you got to be willing to sacrifice other things. It just depends on how far you want to go.
Right.
So one last question for you is, I think a lot of people that do watch this or listen to this or see the clips of this almost think what you do is almost unrealistic to them. It's too much. Like, I think someone is 18, 19 years old that doesn't have a lot of confidence in themselves. I think those are people we can really appeal to, especially if they're going into the fitness field. Like, they look at you like, holy shit, Jesse's deadlifting 700 pounds. He wants to squat 600. He's working at this amazing place. I don't even know what PRI is. Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get there? What advice would you give to someone that's, and I like to say, almost, if you could give yourself some advice to when you were 19 years old, kind of looking to go into this direction that would have helped you then? I know maybe not change everything, but maybe gave you a jump start. What advice would you give someone to help them get started and maybe go into the field of fitness or wherever it may be?
Yeah, it's a great question. If I were to give any advice, I would say try a lot of different things. There's a lot of really good information out there. There's a lot of mediocre stuff too. The fitness industry is kind of treacherous in terms of trying to find quality, information. I would say, if I were to give my former self advice, I would say find a mentor earlier than I did. Because finding a really smart person, somebody who's been doing it for a long time, they can help you navigate, better than you could on your own, not really having perspective or experience. You could find something that you found online and say, hey, this is like the best thing I've ever seen. Whereas, you have no idea where that actually registers in terms of value and credibility, things like that. Try a lot of different things, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like. That's equally as important and valuable. I would say never stop learning. Find ways that you can continue to learn every single day, every single week. If you ever get satisfied with the position you're in, you're going to slowly start to lose your passion or get left in the dust by the people around you. If you really want to be something great and successful, you know, it's nothing that I've done is unrealistic. Like, I'm just an average guy who tries really hard. And the effort is something that I've never not given 100% of the effort. So, you got to work hard. You got to grind. It's a hard career to get into, especially if you want to do it for a long period of time. But in a lot of ways, the fitness industry will weed people out. It'll find ways to say, hey, like, if you're really passionate about it, you'll find a way to make this or get to the other side, or, make yourself better, whatever solution you need at the time, you can find it. But I would say that if you are not wholeheartedly invested in that sort of way, or you don't have something personally attaching it to you, you have to find something that's going to keep you going, keep you coming back, something that's greater than, the task at hand, something that's going to be a bigger purpose to keep you kind of pushing forward. But yeah, definitely, I would say get a variety of different experiences, figure out what you like, learn every single day. And you can't go wrong with that.
I think that's great advice, especially to the point of not settling and getting comfortable. I think people have a misconception of, I'm going to work to get this. And then they get to a certain point and they think they're going to be happy at this certain point, when as like a human being, you look at like our species or how you ever want to word it, if we're not continually growing, whether it's some type of avenue, physically, mentally, or whatever, it's like we're eventually not going to be happy just running the same ordinary life. Like, we like to be challenged. Naturally, we adapt by nature. So I think that's great advice to continuing to push yourself, whether you're trying to educate yourself in the gym, educate yourself in life, your career, your deadlift, whatever it may be. I think that's amazing advice for someone that is just starting and, taking those baby steps one day at a time and just getting better and better and learning and just figuring out who you are, not rushing. Just like you said, the mentor is huge, because I think people now, social media wants that quick fix. Everyone thinks they can get point A to point B really quickly because someone went on, TikTok and got 1 million overnight. Yep. And it's not realistic. It takes time in any aspect to self-develop and educate yourself and just mentally be strong enough to make it through that struggle, like you said. So I think it's great. It's awesome, man. At this point, I just want to say I want to appreciate you coming on. It's been really nice catching up with you. I think a lot of people will love most of the stuff you said, and if not all of it, honestly, and just they'll connect with you, because I think most people, like you said, I'm the normal guy, and they can see what a normal guy can do physically, career, and it's just the beginning for you. So again, man, thanks. I appreciate you having you on.
I really appreciate it, Jeff. Yeah, I'm happy you gave me this opportunity, to share a little bit of my story. Yeah, it's really been pretty great to catch up with you too.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So again, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'll post your social media when we post this on Facebook, Insta, YouTube. But is there a platform you're normally on if someone was to reach out to you more than another?
Yeah, Instagram's probably where I would spend the majority of my time. It's where I put all of my content. That's pretty much the only social media that I use at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and people could find me. My my handle is at JMKURISKO. It's just first initial, middle initial, last name.
Cool. Yeah, we'll tag you in that, and it'll be good. So hopefully a few people reach out, check in with you, and can follow your journey to nationals and hitting that total and the 700-pound deadlift.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. Cool. Yeah. Thanks again for coming on, brother.
Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it.